Week 12 is on its way tomorrow on Thanksgiving, but here's 5 running backs I'm going to bench this week. The first guy's Clyde EdwardsHelaire. I know Hilaire coming off a big game, but he's a guy that's been inconsistent on his touches and what he's doing. And this week he's got a tough matchup versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who give up the 10th least fantasy points to running backs. And Hilaire, he's been all right this year, but there's some games where he disappears and he only gets 10 to 12 fantasy points. And this is the type of game I could see for Hilaire. Le'Veon Bell, he did vulture one of his touchdowns near the goal line in this Week 11 game versus Vegas. And once again, Hilaire, he had 15 carries, decent workload, and 2 rushing touchdowns. And those 2 rushing touchdowns, they're not going to be there every week. And Hilaire, just this week, I don't like the matchup. I'm not going to like the game script as well, because this one, I think it's going to be a passing game for both teams up and down the field. So Clyde EdwardsHelaire, I'm benching him. The second guy is Darrell Henderson of the Los Angeles Rams. He's a guy I've been down on the last few weeks, and I've been pretty correct about the way he's been playing. And now Cam Akers once again scoring a touchdown, taking his spot. Henderson, he don't catch the ball out of the backfield. In Week 11 versus Tampa, 8 rushes, 5 yards, and 2 catches for 4 yards. And Henderson now, he's only hit double digits once in the last 5 games he's played in PPR leagues. And this week he's versing the San Francisco 49er team. I know they're banged up and hurt, but they're pretty decent versus teams in the trenches. In Los Angeles, it looks like a 3-back system there. Anyway, where Henderson, Brown, and Cam Akers. So Darrell Henderson, he's owned in 85% of leagues still, and he's a guy I'm going to stay away from and bench this week. The third guy is Miles Sanders of the Philadelphia Eagles. Sanders, he's been back now the last 2 weeks, but I just don't see him having a great game here with Sanders. I know he's versing Seattle, but this game, they're going to pass it up and down the field versus Cleveland. He only had 9 fantasy points, 16 carries, 66 yards, 3 catches, and 15 yards. I know most people, Sanders is the number 1 back, and I got no choice to start him. But this week, if I got better options or whatever, Miles Sanders, I don't think he's going to have a good game. And I could see him have anywhere 9 to 12 points, and that's not going to do much for a guy that you believe in as your number 1 running back. So Miles Sanders, he don't get many receptions out of the backfield. That Eagle offense is in disarray, even with everyone coming back except Deshaun Jackson and Ertz. But Ertz should be back this week as well. So this week, I just don't like it for Miles Sanders. I know Seattle gives up the 10th most fantasy points to running backs, but I think they're going to bottle Sanders up in this one. And they're going to try Carson Wentz have Carson Wentz try to beat him. So I'm benching Sanders. The fourth guy is Melvin Gordon of the Denver Broncos. I think it was a lucky ball game last week for him, because we've seen the struggles over the last few weeks for Melvin Gordon. Before this ball game in Week 11, he had versus Miami with 14 carries, 84 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And once again, another fumble loss for Melvin Gordon, his second in 3 games. So Gordon this week, he versus the Saints, who give up the second least amount of fantasy points to running backs. And this game, it's not going to be game script, I believe, where they're going to run the ball a lot. It's going to be more like the last 2 or 3 weeks before Week 11, where Gordon's only getting 10 to 12 carries and touches total. So I don't think Gordon's going to do good. The same defense, they're going to bottle up the Broncos' backfield and make Drew Lock try to beat him. And if the Saints are up early, the game script's going to be not in the favor of Melvin Gordon. So I'm looking to bench him this week. And the 5th and final guy I'm benching is Ronald Jones of the Tampa Bay Bucks. Jones, he's a guy I totally given up on after this week. Last week in Week 10 versus Carolina, it was a fluke game with that 98-yard touchdown run. And now versus the Rams, he had 2.40 fantasy points, 10 carries, 24 yards on 1 target. And we know Fournette, he's the passing downs and 3rd down back. Both guys I don't really trust in that backfield at all. So Jones, I can't trust him. He had a horrible game versus the Rams. Now they versus the Chiefs in a game where the game script's probably going to mean they're going to pass the ball 40, 45 times as Tampa. And Jones, I just don't see him getting it going or doing much on the ground this week. I think he's only going to get 6 to 8 fantasy points. So I'm benching him. So that's 5 running backs I'm putting on the bench this week heading into Week 12.